What's up, everybody? Welcome to another Sunday Trialogue. I'm joined by Ricardo Calvario and Ethan Indigo. Guys, introduce yourself. Tell them where they can find you. Go ahead, Ricardo.
Hey, my name is Ricardo Calvario. You can find me on X as the tag that is on the screen at Ricardo Calvary1. You can find my research material on Academia Edu under the Institute for Natural Philosophy page. You can find my books on Amazon. There is The Resonant Earth and Stardust. And I'll invite you all to watch my last presence on the Wandering Wolf show, talking about copper for 2 hours. So if you have any doubts on that, I think we explain it pretty in detail in there. And as usual, I invite you to watch our show, The Shaman and the Philosopher, and our sister podcast, There is the Universe Unveiled. And I think that's it. Thank you all. Thank you for having me, Atlas.
Very
Thank you very
well.
much. Go
Awesome.
ahead, Ethan.
Awesome to be here with you guys as always. Always get a lot out of our discussions. Ethan Indigo Smith, easy to find on all the social media. And in fact, I appreciate people reaching out if inclined to do so. Many articles out there and a few books, and I appreciate your support as well on those. And yeah, thanks everybody for being here.
Thank you. And you can find me on X and Twitter and everything else. You know where I'm at. So let's just get into it. Let's get into what Ricardo had prepared for us today. We're going to talk about these weird stones.
Okay, so it's easier for me to follow my text. So it goes like this. In the heart of Romania lies a geological enigma that challenges our understanding of the natural world, the Trovants. These peculiar stones, found predominantly in the village of Kosteschi, possess the astonishing ability to grow, move, and seemingly reproduce, defying conventional perceptions of inanimate matter. So, at first glance, Trovants appear as ordinary rocks scattered across the landscape. However, upon closer inspection, they reveal a dynamic nature that blurs the line between the animate and the animate. So, after periods of heavy rain, these stones exhibit growth, expanding in size and occasionally sprouting new formations from their surface. This phenomenon has led to locals' legends describing the stones as living entities capable of movement and even respiration. So, the term Trovant is derived from the German, that's a good word, Sandsteinkronkritionen, probably, meaning,
Say that three times fast.
yeah, meaning cemented sand. So this nomenclature refers the composition, that is, a hard stone core encased within a shell of sand. The unique characteristics of Trovants have not only captivated the curiosity of geologists, but also inspired sense of wonder among locals and visitors alike. So these stones, I'm not sure if you're showing that you are. I'm going to leave the text. So these stones that are a rare phenomenon, although not unique, you were just showing that one on India. There is a small hippo that was placed in the middle of a temple, and in 1,000 years, the stone is now bordering the temple, and they have to cut the stone of the temple so it continues to grow. Uh, they actually, you see, they reach a point where they separate, and the other stones continue to grow, but they are not hollow. They are completely filled with matter. So it's the although the geologists can say that this happens because of moisture and so on, no one knows how this process happens. How is that these stones can constantly grow, multiply, and be seen by people. So from generation to generation, they can see more stones that were one size, and now they are in a completely much larger. It's a phenomenon that I think most people don't know of, and it's extremely interesting. And this photographs are all from Romania, from that near that village.
Right, but it certainly puts some meat on the bones of the troll fairy tales. Like they come and go from stones, right? So it's like they're alive, but they're also stone. And then you've got the gargoyle myths and stuff like that, how they transform from stone to life. And there's actually a lot more stone mythology than people really even give it credit for. Think about Medusa,
Sure.
right? Supposed to transform living matter into stone. And there's also lots of petrification that people have questioned, like Devil's Tower. They're like, is that a giant stump? But would it be that difficult to see how this could apply in other areas? Maybe there's a mineral or some sort of interaction that causes this type of strange rock growth.
Sure, and you can imagine how this was magical for the ancients, because and who knows if they ever try to control it, because if you put them into a mold and give them water, they will grow. So
Right.
That was
can
my first inclination to think that if they see it occurring in nature, maybe they think it's magical, but also they think it might be technological thing that they could control and manipulate and use, right? So it makes me wonder about all these places where they talk about the rocks are actually cement. Well, what if they were grown and cultured in some manner that apparently is happening here? It's so odd that mineral can be created from nothing, though, and expand. It's very fascinating.
that's what geologists don't understand, because by
Right,
adding moisture to stone doesn't make a stone to grow, right?
right.
And in this case it happens. And to me the most impressive is that image that you showed, that has two balls on top of a small pinnacle, because people would see clearly it's
This one?
exactly, yeah, because it started just
Right.
as a small
So
piece
distinct.
on top of the rock, right, and then
Right.
grew and then separated, and now it's almost two balls of the same size
Bizarre.
on top of it. So people that know the area and stop going there for many years, when they come back, this is different. Am I lost? Am I not in the right place? It's just, it's something that when I found
Uh,
fascinating.
this actually brings up a lot of interesting problems that I think a lot of people don't really associate with galactic weather, right? What if there are more conducive parts of our galaxy where, intergalactic radiation can actually produce rock growth on the planets that are flying through there? So let's say that there are different eons that this planet can go through where rocks can grow, right? And maybe stuff like idols and using all of the statuary from rocks is meant to sort of reciprocate or replicate some kind of a different aeon where rocks are doing this kind of stuff, right? So this is like an ancestral memory of rocks creating themselves,
Yeah, and you touched a point that is to me
the
very
gods.
very curious. There is no, yes, but you spoke about trolls and creatures that are made of stone, because if you take a piece of this stone, that's the funny thing. If you take just a piece, you go there and you hammer it, and you take a piece and you put it into a casing, and then add moisture, in time you'll have the format of the casing that they are on. So you can
No.
create idols. Yes, they
But outside, so they take it outside of the area to another place and just add water.
just
And
add
they,
water. That's how they grow. They don't need anything else. They are not taking any minerals beside
right.
the ones
No,
present
no,
in the
but
water.
it grows elsewhere.
It grows anywhere. They just have this. These stones are more particularly found in this place and one or two other places in the
So
world.
what is the classification of the stone? Is it
It's a trovant. That's the name that they gave it. It's a trovant.
okay? But is it similar to a makeup of X amount of quartz and this and that
Right. Yeah,
as other
he's
stones
got
are?
the
What
sand.
Sand,
Yeah,
sand?
sand.
sand concreting. Yeah.
That makes no sense. It's
So
bizarre.
imagine
Well,
we
there
can.
is the in the air. There are so many parts per million of minerals, right? I mean, it's so small that it's almost immeasurable, but there are in the air minerals. So I mean, that's it. Just I'm just making a deduction that maybe they're
Yeah, there
somehow
you go.
getting it from the air.
You can see this one just exploded like a few years
Oh
ago. So
wow!
you can still see the sand, and now it's going to get that that a gray color is growing on top of it. It's
Crazy.
just petrified agglomerated sand.
Right. So, I think about the acid rain, right? So you've got this chemical reaction from the accumulated rainfall, which causes these, stones to be eaten away. What if there was a catalyst that caused the stones to sort of expand, right? Having a thermic reaction. Usually, this is associated with thermic reactions. Like, think about the snakes, right? So the little snakes and sparklers. You light the snake on fire, and they start doing the thing, right? So that's a thermic reaction where now you're getting an expansion of material. So if you're talking about maybe the water carrying a certain type of quality to it that then activates the sand to start expanding,
Multiplying.
right? Is this well, I mean, are we actually measuring the weight? Because the weight is the real determining factor between expansion and multiplication. If the weight changes, that's when you've got multiplication. If it's the same weight and yet a little bit bigger, it's expanding. But also, you've got the minerals in the air and the minerals that then get deposited. So over a long enough time period, I could see how the accumulation of these minerals and the concretion, that's part of the Trovan mixture, is the concrete aspect to it. So there has to be some sort of calcium silicate that is growing here.
Sure, but the thing is, as you've seen in so many pictures, those that are cut and you can see inside, they are not hollow. And the particles are all the same size. So the particles are not gaining size. It's more particles of it. So they are actually multiplying. So and this caused some kind of misinterpretation. So for instance, the first image you were showing, they looked like they were heated up. It's people would go there and say, oh, this is a massive event of heat. No, the first thing, the very first one, where it even looks like it's vitrified. This one's right. You see the last one there. We look at this and say, oh, was a massive event of heat, but it isn't. So each one of these bulges that you are seeing in the first and second stone, they will come out of the stone and start growing by themselves.
Wow, trippy.
That's how they multiply. You see, this is just one stone
So wait,
from
Ricardo,
the top of the hill. It's just one stone that pieces start falling down and growing. It's
in your research, Ricardo, is this the only area that it's been verified that this is happening, or is there any other places on the planet?
This is where there are the greatest concentration of this kind of stones in the world is around this city in Romania, but they can find in other places. So as I told, India uses this kind of stone. I don't know how they find it, but it uses this kind of stone for some temples that they built around 1,000 years ago, so that the divinities actually grow in time. So they had this ceremony of putting water on top of it every single day and so on, and this grows. So it creates a bigger perception of something magic going on there. And you said, Headless, you're going to talk about magic, and I think the main thing that people should understand about magic is that we live in a time where we mixed illusion with magic. So because we see a lot of these people creating magic on television, on shows, on the circus, whatever, they are not doing magic. They are doing illusions, which are tricks that we think they are doing this, but they are just doing things back scenes that we can't see. Now, this is what I consider magic, because it's material coming out of we don't know where. It's actually something coming from nothing.
Right. So, well, I think it's really important for people to get the sense of how central Romania is to the rest of the world. So a lot of people sort of forget about where the revolution of metallurgy took place. It's right here in Bulgaria, right? We're talking about 7,000 to 8,000 years ago. We're finding the first stuff in Bulgaria up here in the Caucasus, Odessa region. This is very, very central to all of civilization. And Romania is right smack dab in the middle of this region. So if you're talking about, having these idols grown in Romania and then shipped all over the world, I could actually see that happening. I mean, the Black Sea right here, this right here, this little part right here, if you're seeing my cursor, that is where the Golden Fleece, Jason and the Golden Fleece took place. So we're sailing from Greece all the way over to here, and this is where gold is being processed, right? Because the Golden Fleece, how it works is this. You run these fleeces under water and sand, sediment, right? So you're shoveling the sediment onto these fleeces, and the gold gets caught at the very bottom of these fleeces. So as you're running them through the water, you're collecting the most gold material at the bottom of these fleeces. That's how they would process gold. That's why it was called the Golden Fleece, right? So this was how they were able to process a lot of gold from these streams. And this is the region for it. So all of the metallurgy is coming from up around here, all around the Black Sea. And, Romania, I'm not sure what part of Romania. Do you know what part of Romania this was in?
Yes. Let me give you a second. So it's not easy to spell. It's Costesti. Costesti.
Okay. COS
TES.
Oh, there we go. Cotesti, Romania.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. So this is Cotesti, and it is, close to the southern part of.
I wonder what's the elevation.
It says, no, that's the number.
Yeah.
Population as of 2001. No, I guess that might be the elevation. I don't know. I'm not seeing it. They got some hotels though. If you want to go to Cotesti, you can go to Ramada by Windward. $72 a night. So you can go there and start filming growing rocks immediately.
Taking a piece of rock, and they don't allow that. They have guards there so that people don't take pieces of the
That's
stone.
fine. All you got to do is make a video with yourself in it, and you can go super viral with it. So we're giving people gold here, and they don't even realize it. I wanted to kind of talk about why I think it's an exothermic reaction. Have you guys ever seen elephant toothpaste?
I don't believe so. It grows.
Yeah. Watch the chemical reaction and tell me if this looks similar to what's going on the front of these rocks.
So you just saw the family-friendly version of elephant toothpaste. That was spectacular. It's an experiment that you can do at your house, but most importantly, it's one that you can do and then touch and hold. All those little bubbles that you were holding, that was oxygen, because the hydrogen peroxide that you have at your house, that 3% or 6%, it decomposes, and that yeast was the catalyst. Because this is 4th of July, we're going to try something just a little bit bigger. Instead of using the 3% or 6% hydrogen peroxide. And now we pour this in.
You can find the formula. It used to be hard to find the formula for elephant
1.
toothpaste, but not anymore.
Oh my gosh. Look at that. Oh. And look
you see
at
the
all
shape
of the
I'm
heat
talking about,
that's
right?
coming off. That's because this is an exothermic reaction. It's producing all sorts of heat. This is very, very warm. We don't want to get our hands in it. But what we want to do now is, that's yellow. It's time to try something just a little more patriotic. So I figured for this again, we could introduce red. It'll be kind of yellowish, but white and blue. All right, I got to pour these fast. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
Oh, it didn't have the time. I was expecting it. It didn't have the time. Oh, there it goes.
There you go.
Happy 4th of July, everybody.
But you see what I'm talking about right there.
I do.
Yeah, that's the same type of geometry that we're seeing with those stones, and I think that could be an indicator of the type of chemical reaction it is.
But aren't they managing to produce these without heat now?
I don't think so, because usually anytime you've got that rapid expansion like that, that would be an exothermic reaction.
Because it might be AI, but I've seen some videos of the pranks they do to the people that stole the Amazon boxes, and they take him into the car, and he explodes into the car, and it's all
Right.
filled with that kind of foam from a
Right.
little tiny box, and they are not. No one spoke
Right.
about heat, so
Well, it's
maybe
not
it's
super
AI.
hot.
Maybe it's AI, but I don't know.
It's not
No,
super
I
hot.
don't know about
It's
that one, but
AI
I've seen
too.
them. I've seen them hit up people that steal packages like that. I don't know about that one in particular. Sorry,
Well,
Headless.
you can infinitely play around with the formula for elephant toothpaste, as they call it. It's called a lot of other different things, but you can play around with it and actually get other reactions happening as well, or change the nature of how it reacts with the other chemicals in there. So it's easy
It
to play
makes
with. So
that the way he described it, it makes me think that there is some kind of uh, quote unquote yeast or similar that is widely available in this area for some reason, and that is maybe the reason, because it seems like there's the chemicals, the concepts, nothing there is different, but maybe there's some kind of microbiology that's there.
Yeah,
Some,
the geologists sort of very different scenarios trying to explain how it happens. The problem is exactly what Headless touched. It's not expansion, is multiplication. So they are actually, and sand is little pieces of glass and quartz. That's what produces sand on the beach, right? It's glass and quartz pieces that were dissolved from actual stone. And those pieces are indeed multiplying instead of expanding, because the grains are always the same size. So they are actually multiplying, and they can't explain how. So, but the process is very similar to what this elephant toothpaste showed. The difference is, instead of expansion, that is clearly the case here, it's actual multiplication. So it's a much slower process. Of course, it takes 100 years for a stone probably manage to produce significant variations. Uh, but they actually grow and multiply.
well, there is a concept of multiplication at low energy within alchemy, right? So I actually pulled up a video. This is sort of a blind tester video. So this guy is talking about multiplication in alchemy, and I thought that would be kind of relevant.
Multiplication in alchemy is known by the alchemy symbol, the Ouroboros. Twin serpents forming a circle, one with wings and one without, which signifies the volatile and the fixed. The turning of the alchemical wheel. Each rotation of the wheel of alchemy was considered to be one multiplication. Old alchemical manuscripts noted that there were two forms of multiplications in alchemy. One was known as a multiplication of quantity, the other was known as a multiplication of quality. Older terminology, sometimes something was lost in the mix, sometimes the words weren't exactly right, so transcriptions of them may not always be 100%. Sometimes we have to kind of ascertain what they meant. The old alchemical axiom, dissolve and coagulate. Two things which kind of match two forms of multiplication in alchemy. Over here, we have dissolution, the dissolve portion of solve et coagula. I have performed imbibitions in this glass in order to dissolve that matter.
I don't know what he's
This
solving.
is one form of multiplication in alchemy, because every so often I pour off the liquid and add new menstruum, doing imbibitions in this glass where I am dissolving this matter. Over here in this glass is the coagulation aspect of solve et coagula. Dissolve and coagulate. Two forms of imbibitions that I'm doing. I add fresh menstruum into this glass to dissolve this matter, and when it's supersaturated as a supersaturated saline solution, so to speak, I pour it off into another glass to evaporate the matter through distillation to achieve coagulation. I perform imbibitions in this glass, and I perform imbibitions in this glass. One is designed to dissolve, the other is designed to coagulate.
So if we're supposed to put the alchemy filter on this, I think what you would say is that this would be the coagulation process being applied to these stones.
May I add the word as a kind of timely addition to that alchemy presentation? We should actually pronounce resolution as resolution, for it is an alchemical term, just like dilution, as he mentioned, and it was an alchemical process, and so the term resolution is actually resolution, right? And so we change our quantity and quality. He mentioned this idea too, which is kind of a remarkable idea.
Right. I'm thinking of the potential of a person to go out there and see what different effects they can have with, let's say, music, vibration, all of these other aspects that maybe go along with maybe the growing of these things. We can do experiments to figure out if there's other forces involved, and maybe we can enhance the effect and get a bunch of heavy metal artists out there to grow rocks.
Sure. Because if we could find how to accelerate the process, yeah, that would be fantastic.
Well, it's just fascinating that it is occurring, and we're not going to find necessarily how it's occurring, but it's really fascinating that it occurs at all. Don't they say that the Earth itself is expanding, right, via particles coming in from space? They always remark, but that just seems like a stretch. But like the Earth is always enhancing its layers to where literally you're digging into the past. So I guess maybe some layers erode, but isn't this a fact, if you will, Ricardo?
Well, I also heard a very good explanation of how matter is constantly being created in the Earth's nucleus. So, and that I haven't heard before, and this was by Rick Osmond, and he explained that chemically the core and the way that it works in electromagnetics and geology and so on, it's actually creating particles of matter constantly. So, but because in terms of what we receive from space, they calculate that the erosion, for some kind of coincidence, is exactly in the same scale as the matter that we collect from space. So all the growth that you get from the it's an enormous number. The number of matter that we collect from space as we travel following the sun, it's an enormous amount of matter that constantly falling into Earth. But they say that yes, but they say that the erosion cuts 99.9% of it, sometimes 100% of it. So the only growth that we have is by mantle geological processes, like the Himalayas is still rising because the Indo plate is colliding with the other, and so it's pushing the Himalayas up around an inch a year or something like that. It's not by accretion, because many people think that the expanding Earth comes from the material received from space. They say no, because erosion takes all of that material.
Thank you for writing that. That's
but if matter is being generated at the core of the planet, then it expands from inside out, and we have no control over it, right?
And you mentioned the Himalayas, and also I imagine that there's some measure of stuff that comes out of volcanoes, although it must vary, right? But there's many volcanoes.
We're talking about total volume. Total volume would have to go up in relationship to the amount of material that is coming down onto the planet.
That's true.
But there are alchemical processes that have been noted, especially horsetail. Horsetail is an herb that has a mysterious alchemical process inside of the body. It goes from silicate to calcium, which is not supposed to be a possibility. But they've noted that the silicate to calcium happens with horsetail as an herbal remedy. That's not supposed to happen, but they've noted it. So what if what we're seeing is a kind of alchemical reaction going on within the mantle or the core of the Earth that is actually producing more matter at a I guess atomic scale, right?
Well,
at lower temperatures than what are normally associated with the atomic output. So this is the thing about alchemy, is they're just talking about processes we know exist at a level that is at much higher energy, right? Much higher temperature. All they're saying is, well, what if it actually can happen at a lower temperature too? And so that's what alchemy has been demonized for, is saying, well, what if it could happen at a lower temperature or lower energy output?
So in here it says, at their core, trovons consist of cemented sand grains bound together by a carbonate-rich outer layer. The structure is believed to have originated from seismic activity approximately 6 million years ago, when powerful earthquakes compressed sandy sediments and infused them with mineral-rich waters. This geological process gave rise to the hardened formations we see today, their shapes ranging from smooth spheres to more complex root-like extensions. The secret of their growth lies in their interaction with water. When rainwater saturates the trovon's outer layer, it activates mineral salts contained within their structure. These salts dissolve and create an internal pressure that pushes the stone outward, causing it to expand. This process is slow, with growth often measured in millimeters over decades, yet is undeniably real. What makes this phenomenon even more intriguing is the ability of smaller trovons to emerge from the surface of larger ones, as though the stones are reproducing, an occurrence that seems almost biological in nature. Another thing they say is, adding to the mystique is the presence of coescentric rings within the trovons. That is what the actual material that is being generated and expands, right, that are reminiscent of tree rings. So when cut open, these rings reveal a layered history of growth, which to me denies all the explanations geologists gave that I just read. Each ring making a period of mineral accumulation and expansion. This has led to some to speculate whether the trovons might represent an inorganic parallel to life itself, and their growth and reproduction echoing the patterns we see in living organisms.
Here's a thought. What if we're looking at something that is invisible happening to the surface of these rocks, right? So just imagine this for a second. What if there's a fungus that is actually processing this material out of the air and depositing it on the surface? Mm-hmm. And we're seeing it as rocks, but really there's a invisible layer of, I guess, mycelium on the outside of it that's producing these substances. I mean, they're talking about millimeters over decades. I could see funguses doing that.
Sure.
They're not looking at the fungus because all they can see is the rock. But
it's
if
a rock,
the layers are deposited on the outside, I think a fungus is a pretty good culprit too. I don't know. Nobody's doing the study on the fungus. So
yeah. Well, they say that they exist in Russia, on the Siberian platform, parts of Wyoming in the United States, and the Carpathian Mountains, and in fact, some of the people try to explain that these were the stones that are found to move in the Death Valley, although I think that was already explained how they move, more or less. It's just by the ground getting completely iced, and then even a small breeze, they say, can move the stones and leave those passes. That it's a mystery with, I don't know, 200 years, 300 years, but they filmed it last year, or not last year, 2 years ago. They filmed it with 24-hour cameras, like wildlife cameras,
Right.
and they actually captured the stones moving, right? And the only explanation that they say is that the floor gets completely iced, and because there is no
I still
nothing
go by that.
yeah, they say it's small breezes move the stone, but they are not aerodynamic at all to be pushed by wind. So I think that's, I don't
Well,
know.
I got a video pulled up if we want to watch
Sure.
it real quick. It's fun.
Roughly 6 million years ago, paleo-earthquakes created a type of geological phenomenon called trovents. They are also known as the stones of Castesti, after their most famous location in Romania, or the living stones. Romania's rare trovents were formed under highly complex circumstances involving seismic shifts, sand sediment in rivers and rain, and lots of time. And the locals of Castesti, Romania, consider them to be alive. Having witnessed them grow, expand, and move over generations, the Romanians have turned the trovents into local legends and myths. For geologists, trovents have long been a captivating mystery. What are trovents? Trovents are made up of a hard stone center surrounded by sandstone and vary in size from extremely small and pebble-like trovents to stones weighing several tons. Although most trovents are made from sandstone originally, geologists have also found some made from gravel or gritstone. Trovents are an incredibly exciting and unique type of rock formation found within specific areas of Romania.
Can you pause
How are trovents formed? The name
on that image? Because I think that's important for people to understand exactly there. Yeah. That's just one stone
Right.
that multiplied, and then another one, and then another one, and then this is not several stones growing. It all began with one stone. That's why they are lined up, and that's why they say they move, because they expand over the land. So, and they
And
are
what's really interesting is the sandstone in the background. Is that the same stuff as this? Like, are these
No.
similar substances?
No, they aren't.
Also
And they just said that even different tribes of mineralogy have the same thing. So what makes this magic, that's real magic, happen? Because we don't understand it, so you have to call it magic.
right. And the thing I love about geological mysteries is how dumb they are. Right. Like, there's just absolutely no explanation for why these stones are moving across the desert. There's no explanation for these trovents. They just keep, they're really interesting mysteries, but they're also kind of really dumb. Like, they've got that element to it. It's funny.
How are trovents formed? The name trovent is a synonym from the German word Sandsteinkonkretionen, meaning cemented sand, which explains how these rocks are made. Trovents can only be formed when sand accrues with sandstone deposits around a hard stone core and is cemented by water that has a high concentration of calcium carbonate. This mixture melds together to make these truly fascinating rocks known by locals as the growing stones. What makes them so exciting is that the locals have witnessed them grow and multiply over the years. Due to the elements it takes for these rocks to be formed, they go through an unusual process that
All right. So here's more evidence of what I think is
The fungus,
happening.
those
Yeah, there you
bubbles.
go. Now you see how they're moving out from each other?
Yeah.
That looks like mycelial networks, right? So they're just sort of in there, and then they're being deposited by these mycelial networks. I could see that as a thing.
And
I mean,
that
you
can
guys,
explain growth for sure, right? That
yeah,
their excrement can be whatever
Yeah,
it
but
can.
think
accretion.
think think about this. Do we have any? I don't know. I'm asking. Do we have any biological um, creatures or entities that have no other function than to grow and multiply?
Yes,
Because I think this is just from an old Earth or something that might have been much more prevalent in other conditions in other planets.
Sure, yeah,
This is just silica life at
sure.
that level,
right.
right?
It would seem like silica life, yeah.
But again, there would have to be some kind of a structure that you
Sure.
could identify as sort of like cellular or some sort of like how is it reproducing? How is it doing that? And I think if we're looking at the outside of it, we might find that it is an outer organism. But it would kind of explain how the differences between these different rocks are happening. So I mean,
Yeah,
again,
but
who's testing for
no,
fungus?
they aren't. But she repeated several times. It's a hard rock at the center
Right,
with sandy conglomerate on the outsides. But you can't do that because it would
right.
fall apart. You can try to reproduce that, but it won't grow. It would just fall apart. So how is that nature itself can create this?
And again, the moisture they're talking about that would create the accretion would be acid rain, and the acid rain would break down the sandstone. It wouldn't accrete.
Agreed. Exactly.
So, like the whole thing is
Formed,
backwards.
they go through an unusual process that makes the rocks appear to grow and move.
Up here,
Do these strange geological formations really grow? The answer is yes. For all intents and purpose, they do grow, but trovents grow in a very specific, unique way. When there is unusually heavy rainfall in the areas trovents are found, they tend to absorb minerals in the rain. Along with the formation of the sand and sandstone deposits already present as the shell of the rock, a chemical reaction begins, putting immense pressure on the inside of the trovent.
Alchemy.
This pressure from a chemical reaction expands the trovent outwards from its core towards its outer crust, making the rock itself grow. On the surface of the rocks, small deposits are pushed outwards, adding to the rock face, leading to their name, the growing stones. Overall, trovent growth is a rather slow process, and the rate of growth is only around 4 to 5 centimeters, 1.6 to 2 inches, in 1,000 years. But over the millions of years, the rocks have been growing. Some truly beautiful and particularly interesting formations have been created. Bubbles or boulders. Over the years, geologists have cut open numerous trovents to see what they are made of and found that, not unlike tree rings, these geological formations also have multiple ringed elliptical layers inside. This is because the rocks effectively grow through bubbling outwards when rained on, and under those conditions they pick up
how?
further deposits of sand from their area and continue to grow slowly over years. This explains the layers the geologists noticed within the trovents they
Not
cut
that
open.
well. Does it explain it that well?
Trovents
Does it?
also move, albeit super slowly, but they do travel to some extent. Because these rocks are picking up surrounding sand when it rains, they are effectively changing the landscape and creating a path for themselves that allows them to dislodge and move small distances over significant periods of time. Conclusion. So trovents aren't technically alive. This isn't some horror movie waiting to
You
happen.
pause it there.
However, these
Yeah.
rocks do change.
I'm totally ignorant of geology, but from my layman's understanding, that rip in the earth right there could represent a long span of time in its depth. So, Ricardo, to your point of it being
Well,
and headless, to your point too, about it being a microbial life, a silica life from the past. Well, maybe it could have popped out from that deep layering there, and then it just is doing its slow and expansion thing.
Yeah, but the difference is, and Shaman was putting on the comments like stalagmites. The difference is stalagmites and stalactites grow on the outside. It's the accumulation on the outside. These grow from the inside. And that's the key difference between stalagmites, stalactites, and trovins, because they don't accumulate on surface. They come from the inside. They brought out of the stone and then fall to the ground and then continue to grow and create another and another, creating these lines that we see here.
Right. So it's growing from the inside. When it rains heavily, it accrues these masses on the outside, right? So
no, it absorbs the water to the nucleus,
right,
and then creates a pressure that they can't explain why there is a pressure in an inanimate, not reading or not moving material, right? It creates a pressure from an alchemical reaction, and that creates material. That's what she's not saying, because it's not expansion. The pressure would create expansion, but in this case there is no emptiness. Everything has the same density, so it's actually creating the crystals and the grains and all of that, to the point that makes like a tree. That's how a tree grows, right? It creates layers.
Well,
right?
to Ethan's point, he talked about the stratigraphy in the background layers. Well, if trovins are let's say 5 to 10% more common than they actually believe they are, then it puts all of our ideas about the dating of the earth in the shitter. It takes all of our ideas about the dating of the earth and puts it all in the shitter, all of it. Because now you have rocks that grow from the inside out, which
and
is
multiply.
the exact opposite of what stratigraphy says happens with these layers of the earth. So if this is common at all, if this was more common at one time, then it takes the entire dating of our entire planet, all of the geological work that's been done so far, and puts it in the shitter.
Sure, and the process is just, I'm quick, Ethan. Sorry, the process is so slow. How many of places on Earth that have few numbers of population or none at all have this kind of mineralogy that no one noticed, because there is no record of what it was to what it is now.
And even if it's happening at a larger place or pace, rather, in more places, one might not notice at all.
Exactly.
If the rocks are in the ground. My dad was a gardener, rest in peace, for decades in the same garden. And all of his friends, a lot of his friends rather, were also gardeners and farmers. And this is in Maine. And he swore to the point of cursing madness that the rocks multiplied in his garden every year. He would, and he eventually gave up, but he made strategic attempts to remove the rocks from his garden. He theorized ultimately that the earth was moving and the bigger things come up and the smaller things sink. This is a possibility that this wasn't happening, but he swore that the rocks were breeding.
That would contradict gravity, but I see your point.
Well, with the earth moving and so forth, that it kind of
if it shakes and there is space between
right.
the particles, it can sink. The higher things sink and the lower things remain on surface. Yes,
it was just a big, he couldn't figure it out, and he was trying to figure it out in every which way possible, and that was one of the things.
Yeah, because if you are gardening, you take the stones out to make the soil more loose for the plants to grow, right? And you come back and where does the stones again? I just took them out. So, but the question then leads to is, like we find so many places that geologists say there is no chance that they are. For instance, things like the Devil's Tower, right?
Well, one difference is the deposition. So every time you're talking to a geologist, everything is based off of deposition and erosion, right? So all of these processes, as soon as you reverse that process of erosion and deposition, you've taken all of geology and just thrown it on the ground and blown it up. So it doesn't work anymore if that's not the process that's happening here, because that's the process they've applied to absolutely everything in the universe.
Uniformitarianism is
Bingo.
which is a terrible concept for science, but so this raises a question that is, we are in 2026 and we still don't understand the planet we live in, right? Because we just take it for granted. We don't look for these things. No one is going to try and see if that canyon is taller or if that stone had grown 2 millimeters since the first time it was documented.
Sure.
Right? Because there's not enough time for us to notice. But time is extremely relative in relation to what you are, right? So if you are a planet, you go through time. Yeah. Yes, thank you, Flower. So if you are a planet, time is completely different to you than what is to a human, right? Because the scales that we look on, it's like those that read Tolkien know, for instance, the Treebeard conversation, where he's trying to describe to them that time for hobbits is quite different of time it is for him, that has been there since the first stage of the world, right?
Right.
And in this case, geological time is almost like something we can't understand, because it's
Completely unimaginable.
yeah, the vastness of time is completely different. So what could have been in the past to us is completely veiled, and what is happening now is veiled still, because we can't see the changes. They are too small for us to detect in 80 or 90 or 100 years. So who knows?
Well, it brings up panpsychism a lot. I mean, like, this is sort of panpsychism flopped in your face and said, hey, is everything you think dead actually dead?
Exactly.
What if there is more consciousness, more life in the universe? And I think a lot of people just sort of pass over that because they don't know about Trovins, because it doesn't fit. Again,
and if you have different composition in the atmosphere that creates different types of rain that cause these stones to grow much faster, for instance, instead of just a few inches in 1,000 years, imagine they can grow a meter in 20 years, depending on what is being fed to them, right? So you can control that. How many fields of boulders do we have seen on Earth that now seem to be dead, but might be this kind of thing?
Glacial erratics.
Yes. Everything is a glacial erratic. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Even if it has golden ratio, even if it have alignments, there's nothing to see here. That's just coincidence. Well, coincidence takes planning, as I say. So
I love the mysteries of geology, because it really does question our bedrock, right? I mean, everybody talks about hollow earth and all the rest of these Agartha and this stuff like that. But, when it really comes down to it, we don't know shit about the planet we're sitting on, right? And the uniformitarianism model keeps the general public from knowing about these things, because we have to focus on the generalities and not the nail houses. Have you ever heard of a nail house?
No.
So a nail house is what the Chinese will do when they're doing major construction projects and people don't want to leave. They will stay in their houses and they'll build entire roads around them. And so you'll have this one little house right in the middle of a massive highway. And those were people who refused to leave. And so it's an anomaly sticking out in the middle of a highway. And so a lot of that, I think, is very important to look at in nature. Uniformitarianism, the highway, that's one thing. But does it really teach you anything about the person who refuses to leave, the mysteries that refuse to go away?
So that's in China?
Yeah, nail house. I'll pull it up.
So in a communist country that we are told controls everything, people can say, I will not leave, and they build the highway around. But in a democratic country, he says, I don't want to leave, fine, we'll take you by force and flatten your house anyway. It's your choice. So I find
Yes,
that funny.
sir.
I find that
No,
funny.
it's very funny because it puts everything on its head.
Because we would imagine that the government say, you leave. They don't even have a choice. Like in
Hey,
China, you leave. But
in America, do you ever see any nail houses?
no.
Do you ever see these? And oh, so you don't live in a free country, actually. Actually, this is the proof you don't live in a free country.
Giant. From above, this house in the southern Chinese city of Guangzhou resembles a pupil nestled between eyelids. It's a prime example of what are called nail houses in China. So, what are they, and how did they come about?
The nail houses started to appear in China in early 2000, and just come together with the wave of the China urbanization and the real estate development, which requires the mass demolition of the old community. And I would say it's a byproduct of the China urbanization.
Developers name these seemingly defined structures nail houses because they stick out like a nail from a piece of wood. They were often forced to build around these homes when the owners refused to budge.
You guys remember the movie Up?
Yes,
Nail house,
No.
right? But he had to leave.
exactly.
This is how China ended up with homes in some truly bizarre locations. The phenomenon came about following the 1979 market reforms in China. Land sales became a primary source of local government revenue,
Ooh,
and urban redevelopment projects caused land prices to rise dramatically. But not everyone was willing to give up their home.
and they respected
其他我家都可以，你给我26万，我89万，哪里26万找到这么2间房子啊？你对吧？
I think some people not necessarily want to resist the demolition. They just see it as a bargaining chip to get more profits. So I would say in the end, it's a lose-lose situation because the developers lost more money if they want to change the construction route or construction plan. And also the owners of the nail houses have to live there, but it become a landmark. Chinese netizens joke
What
that
the hell? Look at that thing.
Yo, that's
Oh,
scary. That's
shit.
like a nightmare, dude. Of get like an MC Escher nightmare right there. Holy shit!
It looks like an apocalyptic house kind of thing.
That scares me.
Well, there's so many different examples of this going all the way
You
back.
know,
to
I-
history.
Kevin Costner water movie. I think
Right.
But the thing is, we are
they
not
more
looking.
prevalent.
We are not looking at rich houses. Some of them look like ruins.
No,
Almost.
and that's what I mean. Like, basically, in the reason it doesn't happen as often in the States, I think they just pay him out. They'll like that guy. He just wanted.
They pay him out or kill him. They pay him out or kill him. That's the other part of it. Is here, these people have fought back and they have stuck around and they've refused to die and they've refused to take any sort of bribes from the government. And the government had to basically go along with it, or else people would make them die, right? So they stopped with these people because they had to, because they were facing their own imminent death. That's the only reason the government stops.
I think this guy is facing imminent death living in that house.
Exactly. The whole thing is dangerous. I love it. It's gorgeous. All right, guys.
the strong men never complain about the environment. They just make a change.
But sometimes it's about a lot more than money. Chen Tianming owns this house in China's southwestern Guizhou province. His home was on land that was part of a plan to build a potentially lucrative tourist resort in 2018. But he refused to budge, deciding instead that his home would become a nail house.
其实附近的村民乡亲都已经搬走了，去租房住了，腾空了嘛。他们房子都腾空，人家就来拆了。然后我们家就是没有签拆迁协议，他们也不敢推。 然后但是有点那种就是受到强拆的威胁，然后我才回来的。
The developer eventually abandoned plans to build the resort, but the
Yes,
demands
sir.
to move did not stop. Chan continued to defy a flurry of demolition notices by converting his family's stone bungalow into a 10-story
10-story
tower. At night, his lit-up home even drew tourists who admired his work. It has been called the most impressive nail home in China, a monument to one homeowner's defiance in the face of overwhelming pressure.
其实现在在上面就是会感到就是心旷神怡，游目骋怀嘛，有那种感觉，视野比较开阔，而且世界就是说看到的世界的那个内容比较丰富，远山啊，一层一层的。以前都是把它建成，这个是我的梦想，现在我是守护它，是我的责任，也是我的梦想。首先，第一就是要让它稳固，不被大风大雨就是给摧毁损坏。再一个就是我也要保护它不被人为的损坏。
Okay, if there's one AI site builder you need to meet, it's this dope
Also,
tech from
the
Wix.
United States would have condemned that place.
我觉得
like
可能
real-
不单是
Yep, they would have condemned it and torn it down
That's
as
not
soon
a
as you
code.
started
Like
later.
there are some rural places where you could get away with things maybe close to that, but not that. That looked like they would shut you down.
We're the
real quick.
communists. We're the communists. This whole thing proves it. We're the commies. We don't let anybody do anything. If you've
Well,
got an
I-
idea that sticks out, we smash it.
I just made a funny meme kind of based on how in 1984 there are the three main nation states of Oceania, Eurasia, and East Asia, and it's kind of like Putin, Trump, and Z. And you're right, headless. The one and below it, I say oligarchical collectivism unites us all. And so
Right.
we are all oligarchical collectivists. One day, though, that you can see that the Chinese government is especially afraid of their population rebelling. And one day it's likely to happen. They have made every attempt to control the media and information, including eliminating what happened in their recent history in 1986, I believe, with the Tiananmen Square.
Right. Well,
So-
they have a different form of morality. They think about strength and weakness, us and them. Right?
Sure,
That's
but
the whole-
as soon as you tell a Chinese person, or they begin to learn that they've been taken over by a German philosophy, and then they go, "What? Yeah." Or you could say German Jewish if you want to get more specific. But you know, they literally have been taken over by a German philosophy through Russia. It's not China. It's not Chinese at all.
Yeah, but
Then they get defensive. They don't like to consider that.
And
So I
this-
think it's very possible that we might see, rebellion in China, just as we see in many countries.
but this
When
is
you
just,
don't allow it, it makes it more of a rocky activity. The rebellion. Sorry.
no. I'm sorry. I thought you were finishing.
No. I'm
This-
stuttering along.
This is just for like a road building or a highway, or in that case was a tourist complex. But how about when they are creating new water dams? I don't know how to say it in English. For instance, in Portugal, they created the Alquiva, which is a huge reservoir of water that they are going to create by putting a dam in an area that doesn't have water. So 3 villages had to be evacuated because they were in the place that's going to be flooded by at least 2 times the size of the houses. So 3 villages were moved, and the individual that was the firm that was creating the dam created 3 new villages. Right. The problem is the houses will not be as good as the ones that people had. Right. It would be in a different place, but there is no choice because it's going to be flooded. right? I don't know if in China this excludes the nail houses.
No,
But,
they flood everybody. They'll flood you the fuck out. But yeah, that's. I mean, these nail houses are almost ubiquitous all across China. Anytime they've had this massive resurgence of construction, which has been the last 40 years for them. It's just been nothing but construction the whole time. This is how they launder their money, basically. That's where you find the nail houses.
And I would point out,
major. Go ahead.
Sorry, China did build the very biggest dam in the world, the Three Gorges Dam, which is so big that it tilted the axis of the Earth slightly in one way, and it, in the process, flooded the river line of miles and miles of historic places and so forth, and people's houses, obviously. So they didn't give them too much respect when it came along to the floodwaters. But just interesting project.
So Ethan, we recognize that a dam changed the axis of the Earth, even if it's so slightly, but it changed it.
Yes.
But no one speaks about a mile of ice covering more than half of America and its effects on the axis of the Earth, because that's exponential to that tiny dam, even if it is big compared to what I'm talking about in terms of weight, right? Because ice weighs more than water.
But would if there was
lighter than water.
If there was ice across North America, wouldn't there be ice across other parts of the world?
Yes.
Was there?
Yes.
So maybe, I don't know. I'm not arguing your point or their point. I'm just saying I don't know what they say about that, but it seems like it would be maybe not off balancing because it's all over rather than
the concentration would be superior to 80%. So there was always an imbalance, right? Because even Siberia was like a place where mammoths and other animals.
It was warm there, right?
Yeah, so had
that made
large amounts of food for herbivores. Enormous amounts.
A different axis would explain why there was a nice climate there, maybe. Right?
Yeah, I just never heard it explained on the senses of the axis and
that's what I understand. Again, that it's ever so slight compared to everything, but they did.
I think what everybody
like a second, it changed the day by a second. Something crazy.
What everybody misses when it comes to these mammoths is how quickly they were killed in a flash freeze. Right? They were killed in a flash freeze. That's why they're still preserved. That's why we can tell the plant material in their stomachs. There were no plants there if it was all ice, if they were going across on these.
Sure.
So somehow they were in a microclimate or a climate of some kind that allowed them access to all of this plant material in ice age, right? Apparently. And then they were flash frozen, and now we have their remains perfectly preserved tens of thousands of years later,
with vegetation still fresh in their stomachs, because vegetation would deteriorate but faster than the body and so on. But we still find what they just ate. Right?
It's very much contrary to how they like to present things, that things change over time very slowly, like maybe some things do, like the rocks, but actually some things happen significantly in a moment, as we can deduce with the mammoths.
It had so the Randall Carson, I don't know if it was him or he mentioned this. There is this guy, this scientist, that studied it from the perspective of how we flash froze. Yes, fresh frozen meat. How we process meat to conserve it for our consumption, right?
Right.
And so they try to calculate how cold would it have to be to froze an animal that weighs 1,000 pounds fast enough so that even the vegetation inside its stomach didn't deteriorate. It's still as fresh as it was caught from the ground, right? And
Well,
the numbers are astronomical.
What's the purpose of flash freezing as opposed to the normal process of freezing? Right, you've got to lower the temperature dramatically, very, very quickly, or else what you have is the ice that produces these crystals inside of the body will burst all of the cells.
Exactly.
Right, so you've got to be able to flash freeze it so that you don't get the process of what they call freezer burn, which is where all of the cells have burst and now it's leaking all over everything through these stages of thawing and then freezing. It has to all be frozen all at the same time so that those crystals don't burst outside of the cells. Well, if that's the case and that's how you preserve them, this had to be a massive wave of totally frozen air, like, I don't know, maybe 100 degrees below zero to get that effect.
I think that the only
explanation...
How
do you do that?
Yes, I think the only explanation is the one given at the beginning of I think it's the day after tomorrow. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That there is somehow a hole open in the atmosphere and the cold air of space is funneled into an area of the surface. And everything in that area is going to be like you were in space. It's flash frozen because it's absolute zero. So it's... because the mammoth had to be frozen in less than 2 hours for that to happen, right? Into glass, and they sink much faster than that. They're just giving this period of 2 hours because beyond that, we can't understand it. How we can that dense mass of flesh to be completely frozen from the inside out. That's the other thing. It froze from the inside out, so it's like what is breathing in. Right, so it's something they don't touch because they can't explain it. But in the beginning, you see they try to explain it. Well, it's a movie, but they try to explain it how such a hole could happen, and how the air would immediately be sucked in by the heat of the earth. So the cold would immediately be sucked in, and everything in that area. It doesn't matter if it's a machine, an animal, whatever it is, it will flash froze in a matter of seconds to minutes, because it's like you get out of your space ship in space, right? You have a few 1 minute to live, I think, or less than that, because you are completely frozen.
Well, it all depends on how you're absorbing the light, because light is what is going to keep you from freezing out in the cold of space. And also this is a intense negative vacuum effect. So your lungs would immediately suck in on themselves. So you would die of lung collapse before you would ever die of freezing to death. So, but anyways, I got endothermic versus exothermic reaction, which I think because what I think would have happened with the flash freeze would have to be a chemical reaction, to be honest. I think it would have to be that. So, I mean, again, we're talking about these chemicals all day with
some chemical reactions like this one gives off heat. Others, like photosynthesis, absorb heat. Welcome to Moo Math and Science and exothermic and endothermic reactions. A chemical reaction in which energy is released is called an exothermic reaction. Exo means exit and thermo meaning heat or energy. An exothermic reaction can give off energy in several forms, including heat and light. The energy released in an exothermic reaction is sometimes written as a product in a chemical equation. Take a look. An exochemical reaction can also be thought of as a downhill reaction because the products have less energy than the reactants. As a result, energy is released. An endothermic reaction is a reaction in which energy is taken in. Endo means to go in. The energy that is taken in during an endothermic reaction is sometimes written as a reactant in the chemical reaction. An example of an endothermic reaction is an ice pack. When you mix the pack, the chemicals mix and heat is absorbed and the pack gets cold to the touch. An endothermic reaction can be thought of as an uphill reaction because the reactants have less energy than the product. Reactants need heat or energy for the reaction to occur from the surroundings. Remember, kindness multiplies kindness, and thank you for watching.
Thank you. So,
Thank you. I sent you a link to the chat of a video.
Okay, so endothermic versus exothermic. I think this is what's at the basis of these stones, right? They could be having an endothermic reaction. So the light and heat from the sun could be changing the way that they're producing these things. And also with the ice age, like that could be a endothermic reaction as well, sucking all the heat out of the environment immediately.
Instantly, yeah.
Right.
This reminds me of centrifugal and centripetal forces. One spiraling in and one spiraling out.
Indeed, which brings us to the water wizard, Victor Schauberger. Right. So he talked all about the difference between centripetal and centrifugal force. Right. So if we're talking about an endothermic reaction, right, you would be talking about a heat sink. This would be a interior form of reaction, and exterior would be outward. Again, it's in the word exothermic. The heat's going out versus endothermic. The heat's coming in.
Sure.
Right? So he was talking all about that with spirals.
It would be interesting to take some kind of instruments that go beyond geology to those stones and see if there is anything that can be detected, like heat waves, radiation.
Absolutely. Reactants.
Yes.
There are
Zero visibility. Maintain heading and speed.
What's our heading?
Guys, you got to
035, sir. Approximately 40 kilometers from Balmoral Castle.
You have to lower the volume. It's very loud.
Right. So what we're looking at here is going to be the endothermic reaction that they were talking about the day after tomorrow.
They are already on the eye of the storm. They're getting it. See?
Right.
This is... So
now, eye of the storm, that also happens because the storm shape is a toroid.
Exactly.
So a lot of people are confused about that part, but it's a well-established fact that all of these supercell whatever, it's all because of the toroidal shape of the storm. The toroids produce endothermic and exothermic reactions. It's a very efficient distributor of heat.
Prepare for crash landing.
Prepare to crash landing. How do you prepare to that?
Hold on to something, I guess. So this is before they've left the wall of the storm. This is all within the eye. They're saying
this is in the eye of the stone. Yeah, the eye is the funnel. Look what happens now. Look what happens.
It funnels up. Everybody frozen. So yeah, if you're saying it's funneling all the heat up, it would be a massive heat sink, sucking it up and out over the rest of the pattern.
And space air or space coldness diving in, filling that area of the eye of the storm.
Well, again, like coldness doesn't really do anything other than sink. So what it would have to be doing is just letting it sink, you know.
And the scientists say that this is highly the probability is very small, but the fundamentals of this situation, they can happen. You can have a destabilization of the atmosphere to the point where space air, let's call it that, there is no air, but space matter would be funneled, space cold would be funneled into the surface of the Earth and creates flash freezes, which is zero absolute. It's like I don't even think that the nitrogen that they use for those magnets, the super magnets that float,
right?
I don't even think it's lower than that. So everything is instantly frozen, and that would be explain how so many animals were flash frozen, especially animals that weigh tons. Which
right.
The bigger the mass, the harder it is, because the temperature has to reach the inside of the body.
Bingo. Right. The mass is the determining factor on how fast it can freeze.
Exactly.
And for something the size of a mammoth to be flash frozen would take an incredible amount of endothermic energy.
16 hours with our best machines at the time that this was calculated.
And yet we're finding perfectly preserved bodies in this frozen tundra, which is very, very strange.
Yeah, well, the flesh, we could reproduce the flesh, but we couldn't reproduce the green matter, the plants that they were on the stomach, right? Because they would rotten out eventually by the time that it will shrivel and decompose.
You can tell what season they were in.
Yes.
By what was left in there, and so you can tell whether or not it was frozen, and it wasn't. So, I mean, there's something very strange, to say the least, with all of these mammoths and megafauna. Like, how come this time period of the ice ages produced animals that were so large? Anybody got any answers for that?
Gravity. How can you explain the gravity?
I heard it was a higher oxygen rate.
That doesn't help, because because there is a limit to
saturation point,
to where an animal can grow in relation to the surface gravity factor of the planet. So when one of the things they don't touch is, for instance, those huge brontosaurus, and those animals were like whales. If you put them on land, they will fall under their own weight. They'll die under their own weight, right? It's too heavy. Even considering the mass of the bone and all of that, morphologically, we can't understand how they function, because the gravity would collapse them.
There was different gravity then, is what you postulate.
They don't touch it, but it's the most likely. So that's why so many people believe in the expanding Earth, because a smaller Earth to them would have a smaller gravity, which I don't think it's necessarily a correlation, because it all depends on mass and how dense it is, right? And when you expand, you might be losing density. So I think. Go on.
How much did a head on a T-Rex weigh, right? So you're going to have to counterbalance that by an extremely long tail. And then even after that point, you're going to have to keep all of this stuff stabilized on two legs. It doesn't seem very feasible.
Well, to me, the easiest...
Under those conditions, with the gravity the way it is, it doesn't seem like it would work.
To me, the easiest explanation is actually quite simple. That is, we believe that that the moon has 1/6 of the gravity of the Earth. That's what we are told. That's not true, because there is only two pieces of literature that actually indicate the real gravity surface mass of the moon, and that is a minimum of 66% of the Earth. So that's exponentially higher than we are considering. So if you bring the moon closer, considering it's moving away about 1 to 3 centimeters a year, which I think it's cyclical too, but if you bring it closer to the Earth, you will reduce gravity.
Let me ask you guys this: what happens when you swing a bucket full of water? Does that water spill out?
No, it stays in.
Okay, so what if it's the spin that is producing a kind of a counter effect, or maybe effect of gravity on the Earth? So let's say the faster we spin, the less gravity there is. Right. So if the length of a day is shorter,
You're thinking contrary to reality, because the water doesn't fall down from the bucket because there is an increase in gravity from the
right? So
centrifugal force.
right. So if we go faster,
Higher
right,
the
there would be
gravity.
less gravity because we would be
No,
expanding outwards.
it's more gravity. That's why the water doesn't come out.
Right. But that would be the counter effect to the gravity that's pushing us onto the planet. So the faster we're going out, that would be the expansion centripetal force, which would be going this way, right? Versus the slower we're going, that would be more gravity pulling us in because we wouldn't have that centripetal force pushing us outward, right? Because as you're spinning that bucket, the water is trying to go out to the bottom of the bucket.
Sure.
The faster you're spinning, the less gravity you would have on the surface, right? Because you would be drifting away from that gravity faster.
You were saying that there is more tension at the bottom of the bucket than at the surface of the water in the bucket. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
I'm not sure. I think the whole body of the water is feeling exactly the same pressure. It doesn't have anywhere to go but to focus as much as it can to the bottom of the bucket.
Right. Well, I would be saying the central axis of the bucket would be your shoulder, right?
Yes. The thing that is causing the rotation will have less because it's helped by the gravity at the end of the bucket.
Right. So all I'm saying is, let's say that the central axis of the spin for the Earth is the North Pole, right? And so if that's spinning faster out at the ends, at the equator, you would have less gravity, which is why we have the sort of shape of the Earth the way it is in the what's it called, oblate spheroid, right? So the oblate spheroid means that it's squished out, it's kind of pudgy around the center.
Yeah, because of the centrifugal force, it forces it to bulge
decreasing
out.
the gravity. So if we had faster spin, we would have less gravity.
I see your point. I'm just not sure if I can follow it, because the equator is where there is more gravity, not less.
So let me look it up. I think there's actually less there, but I don't know.
Because that's what causes the bulge out.
Interesting.
But I might be wrong. I'm just trying to follow because I never look into this. So just trying to follow logic here. Ethan, you're very silent.
I'm
Okay,
taking
cool.
it all in. I'm taking it all in. And I'm also giggling to myself in relation to what I was going to bring. It's all
connected.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be hard to find where there is more gravity on Earth, although the difference is not that much. But
I'm trying to get it queued up, but they're talking about it right here. But yeah, I think I was right. I think that there is less gravity at the
equator
versus at the poles. At the poles, the gravity is higher.
Always learning.
This can change the gravity on the Earth. I think that's what's being sort of lost.
Discover the intriguing science behind Earth's gravitational pull. Learn why gravity is stronger at the poles and at the equator, and how this phenomenon shapes our planet's dynamics. You see, our planet is not a perfect sphere, but rather an oblate spheroid, meaning it's slightly flattened at the poles and bulging at the equator. This shape is due to the force of gravity pulling the planet's mass towards the center. Now, here's the interesting part. Because of Earth shape, the force of gravity is stronger at the poles and at the equator. This is because the force of gravity is inversely proportional to the square of the distance from the center of the Earth. So, since the poles are closer to the center, the force of gravity is stronger there. Discover the intriguing science behind Earth's gravitational
That was
pull.
pretty lame.
Yeah, but I understood now. The gravity pushes it down, and it bulges where it is less gravity that is at the equator. I just one of the notes that I can make.
Here's the real question: is the oblate spheroid on that 23-degree axis?
It is.
Okay, so that is interesting. So it has more to do with the electromagnetics than the gravity or the spin.
So the equator follows the inclination, like what do you call those things that spin?
A top.
A top, right? So the equator always follows the inclination. But one thing that I heard this week or last week is that we consider that gravity is caused by the rotation of an object at its center.
Right.
But that's not true, because what causes gravity is mass, and it's the mass itself. So if we were into the center of the Earth, we would have the same gravity pulling us out instead of crushing us in, because gravity would be pulling you from every single piece of the Earth because you are at the center. Do you follow my thought here? So instead of being crushed by massive amounts of gravity or no gravity, it's the other way around. You are being pushed out because gravity is all around you. You are now inside the gravity instead of outside of it. So you are being separated instead of compressed. I don't know how that can help you in your thought process, but that's the reality of the physics there. There is no people think, oh, if I go to the center of the Earth, I'll be floating in no gravity. No, you would be dismembered and separated by the force of gravity if there is strong enough for that. So what we feel compressing us would be expanding us at the center of the Earth, because we're being pulled in 360 degrees sphere. But yeah, so let's follow your thought that less gravity would help to create larger animals by a faster spin. So my next question to that idea is, so why do we find it all over the planet? Not just at the areas confined to near the equator.
I think maybe they could start there and then drift out. I think that could be a possibility, because basically what I see the equator as is sort of like a laboratory for life, and basically all the pressures of birth, death, resurrection, all the rest of that stuff is happening at the equators at a much higher rate than it is at the poles. And then the animals that are basically constructed in that laboratory sort of venture out with all the different cycles of nature and how they pick up nutrients, and it's a constant pressure to migrate away from the equator.
But in order to move from the equator, you'll have to go through different types of climate, right? You go from tropical to the tundra, and then
lots of other pressures.
Yeah. So in order to evolve, you'd have to adapt to new types of food, to new types of temperatures, not only just the single type of gravity, right?
Right.
But if you want to maintain the system, am I on fire? In order to maintain the same conditions that we have now in terms of diversity of animals, if you have a moon closer and that reduces the gravity up to 30, 40, 60%, you can have trees, as we know that they are in the record, that was in much larger. You can have animals that were much bigger, right? The problem is we don't know how to explain or know exactly where the moon was at that time. Well, uniformitarians think they know because they calculate all by the rate that it's happening now. But it doesn't mean that it had to always happen at the same speed, right? This is all conjectural, but I think that the easiest way to explain those large animals, these huge trees, is to have a much closer moon. That will affect the speed of the planet.
Yes,
that
it will
affect, but of the rotation.
It would affect everything, right? Having the moon closer, having it farther away, like all of these are having an effect on the spin and all the rest of these factors as well. So, yeah, any sort of variance of micro degrees in the system will cause massive changes, especially if you consider the three body problem as being relevant to our rotation around the sun and the moon's rotation around us. Make things very hard to predict.
Yeah,
Unless,
go and look what is the highest tide in the world, which is enormous. It's unimaginable compared to other places.
right.
Some places is just a few inches of water, and other places is tens of feet. That the water changes in just one tide. Why?
Good question. Let's see. I got a good video about sort of like the evolution of life. I think Ken Wheeler does a great job of explaining sort of the equator.
You're looking for it, I presume. Headless?
Headless, are you playing it? Because we can't hear it or see it.
You can't hear it?
No,
No.
we can
No,
see
we
it.
can't see it.
Here you can actually see the plane of inertia
Right.
right here. Here's one pole, here's another pole. Of course, you know how it looks after hundreds and hundreds of videos. Underneath the supercell, a magnet doesn't actually have poles. Well, sure it does. Every magnet has a north pole and a south pole. Well, if it did, it would be located there. And if it were located there, then you could cut this magnet in half and you'd have a north pole side and a south pole side. But it doesn't work that way because you could cut it a million times if it were possible. And each, of course, slice would have a, quote, north pole and a, quote, south pole. What a magnet actually has is the inverse to counter space, which, of course, is polarity, which is a three-dimensional S-curve. In other words, the plane of inertia, which is the inverse of magnetic centrifugal divergence, which, of course, forms the geometry of this. The toroid is a cross-section of a toroid, or a donut shape. And this is, of course, what the magnetic field looks like, right? It's toroidal. It's a centrifugal divergence. Yeah. Centrifugal divergence. This is the geometry of force and motion. And the opposite to that, let me move the magnet out of the way, would be the geometry of increasing inertia and acceleration. So you have the conjugate geometry, sorry if I don't draw this perfectly, on every magnet, which of course is this hyperboloid here, or an hourglass shape. This is the geometry of increasing inertia and acceleration. This is towards the plane of inertia, right? You notice it actually makes this interesting cross. And of course, I don't know if you know how much you know about the right-hand rule. And of course, I've got this a little bit messed up now. Let's actually flip the board over here.
So, according to the University of Delaware,
no.
people with an
gotta
IQ of
put
115 and above.
Every
Yeah.
second.
Here we can actually see the plane of inertia relative to, and it's the lowest pressure mediation, or the maximum throw against, use the word throw, the maximum pressure mediation against which the centrifugal divergent magnetic and centripetal convergent increasing inertia and acceleration towards right here, the null point of counter space right here, the plane of inertia right here. This actually sits, here's the dielectric, which is the centripetal, and this is the centrifugal magnetic, this vector and this vector. Okay, right here. We have opposite to the hyperboloid and the torus, and these two are the conjugate geometries of the universe, the hyperboloid, the hourglass shape, and the toroid, or the donut shape. Opposite to those at 45 degrees and 90 degrees to the dielectric, but this is the only place where life exists. Let me actually wipe this out. I don't know if you've actually seen this geometry before, but most of the life on the Earth, you probably heard, exists along the equator. I'll wait for my chalkboard to dry here. And of course, you heard of a spiral arm galaxy, yeah, plane of inertia, and the equator of the Earth. The tropical zones are basically, 95% of the Earth's life exists. Or we could actually draw the same plane of inertia in 3 dimensions. I don't know if I could actually represent it. Looking down, we actually have the sun, and we have Mercury, Venus, Earth. We actually have this plane of inertia to the Earth, and here's the moon over here, sits not only along this plane of inertia relative to the sun, but it also sits at a midpoint at a ratio of 1. This would be 0, and say like Jupiter would be way out here. I can't draw the chalkboard out that far, which would be phi cubed distance to the sun, and also 2 spiral arm galaxies. So let's actually take a look at this geometry in simplex here. And by the way, you need to become familiar with the right-hand rule. None of this will actually become, even slightly apparent or understandable unless you understand the right-hand rule. Right-hand rule is just simply saying pressure mediation, kind of like saying water flows down the tub in your bathtub when you pull the cork, right? Lowest pressure mediation is the water wants to seek the lowest point. That's the plumber's motto, is that crap flows downhill. I think that's the plumber's motto. Here we actually have increasing inertia and acceleration. Centripetal convergence, this of course is right along the hyperboloid here, increasing inertia and acceleration to the plane of inertia. Everything out here, of course, is space, space, space. These 4 S vectors are, of course, the 4 vectors of the toroid, the torus. If I were actually draw this out without making the chalkboard too busy, these would be the 4 vectors of space. To say magnetism and to say creates space, and also to say creates time, is one and the same thing. Here we have the actual vectors of counterspace, centripetal convergence, the actual geometry, and this conjugate geometry of the torus and the hyperboloid. The negative image of a torus is a hyperboloid, and the negative image of a hyperboloid is a torus. We actually have the vectors here of counterspace, but all life exists. You notice that this is 45 degrees, 45 degrees, 45 degrees, 45 degrees, 45 degrees, 45, 45. Yeah, I think I made that simple. The plane of inertia right here. This is the inverse. This is the lowest pressure mediation. In other words, this is the calm from the storm, the shelter from the storm. Trying to make a simple analogy that people can understand. Some places on Earth have really radical, like they're really windy and they're really stormy, and you need to build a shelter, and you want the best place, which would be like in a natural ditch or near a rock cliff, for example, like they have in some places in Ireland, where it's really windy. So you don't end up with bad storms and bad winds. This plane of inertia right here is the calm in the storm, analogously, where life exists, and life only exists along the plane of inertia. This is the calm in the storm between the toroidal centrifugal divergence of the magnetic and the centripetal hyperboloidal. Let me just draw out the hyperboloidal here, the hourglass shape. Yeah, I'm just going to draw out that one. Yeah, right here. I think you know what the donut shape is right here. This is the calm in the storm right here, where life exists. And everywhere we find life in the universe, and even on the Earth, and even on the solar system, is right here at the plane of inertia. It follows the right-hand rule perfectly. This plane of inertia is the calm in the storm, the lowest pressure mediation between these centrifugal divergent magnetic vectors and the centripetal convergent hyperboloidal vectors between the magnetic and the dielectric. And this is the most simplex geometry of the entire universe. It holds true from one end of the universe to the other, and it's this plane of inertia.
Yeah, but he's only taking into consideration the electromagnetic fields, but gravity is different.
He's saying that it's all on the same pressure mediation. So all the same thing would have to be true across the board. So what you see with the magnetic, you could also find in the gravimetric. It's what you can find all throughout the other forces, is that same geometric pattern.
But if you play the short that I sent you to the chat, you will see that that's not really how the solar system is, because we are focusing this idea that all planets are on an ecliptic line around the sun. That doesn't exist. What happens really is what is seen in that few seconds short over there. So I don't know how you can relate, because we are part of that torus. There, we haven't found that central point. We just have micro points like the Earth and so on, but it's a huge system, and we are following the sun going behind him in this, like I describe it as a spring that each turn gets bigger as you go further from the original point. We are all following it. There is no ecliptic line, which to me contradicts many of what we hear from astronomy. But it crosses. And another point to what he was saying is, it's exactly on that area that we have all the cyclones or the typhoon. It's all in that area too, because it's the area of more convulsions, probably because, as you say, it has less resistance. I don't know. Just trying to be logic here. But
well, I think what he's trying to demonstrate is that whatever we find out there, it's going to go by the same level of
follow the same principle. Yeah.
Right.
So this is what we think it is. But in reality, this is what's going on.
Yeah, the force vectors are maintained at the exact same proportions between the two. So basically, it's the 2D model of what's happening in 3 dimensions.
Exactly. Ethan.
All right.
Well, this, was something you mentioned how this was dope, and we're just discussing is the as above, so below type of thing. How things work in resonance in their operation, in their appearance, and so forth. The electromagnetic, the gravitational, and so on. And I would add the meditative. And what I wanted to bring up today is about the number 108. Let's see, I'll share screen here. And of course, 108 is often, it relates to the solar system and so forth, often in regards to the measurement of the distance between the moon being approximately, I think it's more like 110 or 111, approximately 108 moons, and the distance between the Earth and the Sun being approximately 108 suns, even though it's 98 million miles away. Also, if you look at 108 in relation to geometry, it kind of represents, you could consider it as one way to interpret energy, as the 4 ways to comprehend energy. The point is the stillness, and it is not visible, but sometimes you'll see 108 or 1008, I think, insinuating the point, but the point is not there. The 1 is for the individual or the line, and the 0 is the nothingness, and it is a circular energy, and of course the 4th type of energy we've been really touching on this whole episode, rather, is the spiraling energy, which is really the ultimate form of energy, in a sense, and you can see it in the 8, and that is, I think, there are many different lessons within 108, and the alchemical presentation you put forth, Headless, mentioned the quality and quantity idea, and such is within powerful numerology. There's the obvious quantity, but there's also the quality. I think that this is a very practical and useful meditation tool. As with most meditation tools, it is not necessarily a secret meditation or a secret operation. It is that you empower yourself with whatever tool it may be. So this is not like the secret meditation. It's really what you put into it, right? Like, don't necessarily look for the best teacher, be the best student. And this is applicable for meditation processes as well. But I find this simple meditation notion: be one with the breath, let zero thoughts coalesce, excuse my lisp, and tap into the infinite, right? And this can be really a simple meditation or thought process. And you have in 108, as far as quality and quantity goes, it has the oneness, the nothingness, and the infinite. And it also has past, present, and future in a sense too. And with that, the little bits of intuition we might get are usually not of any time. It's of timelessness. So this is from my, epic proportion pages long articles on my website. But the simple way to look at it is with this spiraling energy being the ultimate, as we just looked into with the geological and the cosmic and the weather and so forth. It really is also with the meditative as well, considering with 108 that representation of stillness, and straight linear and circular and spiraling. So
I always saw the 108 as the representation of the oneness understanding of the cyclic of times represented by the 0 times infinite, that is the 8, like a cosmological baseline of everything.
Yeah, it really can relate to so many
things.
Mathematical and metaphysical concepts and facts. It's stunning. And just that it has that trinity of time, if you will, and certainly the trinity of oneness, nothingness, and the infinite is very striking in its simplicity. And of course, the numerous traditions that we've touched on, I think, in the past, the numerous traditions that value 108 as a mantra system and fundamentals of 108 with their beads, right? The 36, 54, and different numbers, not necessarily that equate to 108, but most of them do. Is just another example of how it's inferred, right? The 72 virgins, even, of Islam. That's the 72 is 2/3 of 108, right? And there's so many. The 36 chambers in China, many things relate to.
The 72 is also 1 degree that we move in space every 72 years.
Right. Good. Great one. Yeah, and it's just a really, really interesting number. But I think it's also useful as a meditation tool, as I shared there.
Well, that shows the singularity.
Right. The solar analemma represents that 8 too, and it happens every year. That the infinite is encoded in our skies. Did you guys want to watch a short video about the creation of the solar analemma and what it represents?
Nope.
Nope. Too bad.
Pinpoint asteroids in orbit, then hurl y'all thousands of miles an hour towards it.
What's up, Earthlings? Apparently, there are some flat earthers that are confused about this specific phenomena. Let's see if we can help them out and explain to them how this observation is possible in the heliocentric model. To understand why this happens, we first need to learn a few things about the rotation of the Earth and its orbit around the Sun. A solar analemma is a graph or a plot that shows the position of the Sun in the sky at a single location at the same time of day throughout the year. The rotation of the Earth is not exactly 24 hours in total. It's 23 hours, 56 minutes and 4 seconds, which means one rotation doesn't bring it back to the exact position every day. An extra 3 minutes and 56 seconds is needed for the Earth to rotate back to its same position as the day before. Also, while all this is going on, the Earth has moved in its orbit around the sun.
Now, hold on a minute. Didn't we just watch Ken Wheeler talk about how there's a figure 8 at the central point of every... Isn't that weird? The sun being the central point, and it makes the figure 8 in the sky every day on the same day. Interesting. Every day at the same time, not the same day.
Sure.
Yeah.
To demonstrate this, go outside and put a stick in the ground. Mark the position at the end of the shadow that the stick makes. Do this every single day at the same exact time, and you'll notice that the position changes day after day. The resulting figure 8 pattern is a result of two factors: the Earth's elliptical orbit around the sun and the Earth's 23.4 degree axial tilt. If the Earth's orbital path was elliptical, but its axis not tilted, the solar analemma curve would be oval-shaped. At the equator, this line would be a straight line spanning from left to right or east to west. If the Earth's orbital path was circular, its axial tilt would have the effect of generating a perfect figure 8 analemma curve, such that the top and the bottom loop would be the same size. But because of Earth's elliptical path around the sun, one part of its path is closer than the other. This means the Earth moves faster around the sun when it's at its perihelion or closest, which is around the winter solstice, than when it's at its furthest distance or aphelion in the summertime. This difference in orbital speed gives the analemma its uneven figure 8 appearance. The orientation of the analemma is location dependent. The angle of the figure 8 will change depending on your latitude. In the southern hemisphere, the analemma will be reversed, with the larger part on top. Here's one I created using Space Engine by changing the date by 1 week and taking a screenshot. One for every week of the year. What you see is 52 individual screenshots put together in a short video. Now, if this model wasn't consistent with reality, meaning if it wasn't created using the exact sizes, distances, and location measured and observed in the globe model, it wouldn't match. But for some odd reason, it does.
So, just to reiterate, the figure 8 of infinity is being placed on us from the sun every single day. I mean, like, spiritually, consider that for a minute. Like, the symbol is being projected onto us from the sun every single day. I think that's kind of
and you can find the 8-pointed star or 8-aspected circle and octagon in practically every culture has it.
So what's the source, and you will know best than me, what's the source of the symbol for the infinite?
It is in India, actually, and it is the number 8. That's as far back as I can go. The relationship of 8 and the infinite is in India, of course, where we get the numerological system that we get from the not the Indians necessarily, but with the symbols. But
I'm referring to the actual laydown 8, the actual symbol for infinite.
I think it is, yes, it's India, where that
India.
symbolism, the relationship of the infinite in the shape is India. As far back as I could find, yes.
So there is no art cave with this symbol.
Well, then I don't know exactly if it started as a symbol or the number, but the relationship to the infinite and 8 began in, ancient India, if you will. I'm not sure exactly where there is one particular cave or symbol, but it is as far back as I could go is India. This is a question. It's that symbolism idea. Obviously, the oneness for the one and the nothingness for the zero. That's pretty not abstract. But the 8 being symbolic for the infinite, that's as far back as I could go. And I think it comes from also the influence of the Analema too.
So in your opinion, what came first? The magical, symbolical context of that drawing or that symbol, or its mathematical value?
I think I'm not that I haven't been able to answer, to be honest, with any concrete information. But I think it kind of co-arised, as far as I can tell, that it's due to the symbolic nature of 8 as a completion. Like 10, there's the 8 in its completion.
My question is more like, do you think that mathematics started as was observed as some form of mystical and sacred concept to understand the universe, instead of being what we calculate today to know if we have enough money to go and buy that grocery? You see the difference between the materialism and the interpretation of the cosmos through a sacred language that would be mathematical in its senses, like numbers.
I think it's hard to say, because our surnames, our letters, and our numbers all relate to gods or an aspect of a godly story. So it's hard to say, which came first, the relationship. I'm not sure, but I know that the equation with 8 to the infinite is very old and primal. And it reminds me too, my fascination with 8 stems from 4 pair, my fascination with 4, and the 4 pair of the primal gods of ancient Egypt, with the Ogdoad, the 8 meters, right? Very, very similar to the Bagua of ancient China, in its elemental, primal kind of comprehension of totality in a energetic way, maybe. So I've pondered that question: which came first? How to deduce the symbolism with the number visual and the symbolism behind the infinite. With 8, I cannot properly answer it.
Because, for instance, when I was first shown, I was, I don't know, 20 or 20 years old, which shows how idiot I am. When I was first shown in a square, so you put 1 to 10 vertically and you put 1 to 10 horizontally, and then you multiply the numbers, right? And you noticed there is a pattern in the numbers that are come out of that table. And there is a line coming from the 1 to the 10 that is 9, because any single number multiplied by 9, if you add the numbers of the result, you will always get 9. Any number. You can bring up any number you want. If you multiply it by 9, it will come out as 9. There's no way to...
This is a fascinating thing, and it is due to the base 10 numerology. In other words, if we had a base 4 or base 5 system, the number that we would always see would be 1 less than the totality. I'm too ignorant to explain the numerological aspect of that result, but it is a conundrum, and it's due to the base 10 system that we have. A fascinating aspect of the 8 and 9, real quick, you mentioned the square, and I immediately thought as to why, another reason why this number might be noted as a aspect with completion. If we are to imagine a square, we actually come up with 8 points in a 3-dimensional square. And the 9th is the center point, U. So this is a kind of a geometrical aspect, and you could use this as a meditative tool too, in a sense. But in fact, if we have perimeter awareness of a space, we have 8 points and our center point.
It's very all of this is apparently is all so simple that we ignore it in our
Right.
daily
That's what I
lives.
found with 108. The profundity of it is all so simple in that it's right there. Right. It's not necessarily simple that you can just conjure it immediately, but it's all right there, and yet it leads to such profound depth of idea.
Well, according to that plane of inertia thing, this is like the powerhouse or the engine of all four of those poles coming into a central point, right? So if you think about the expulsion pattern of light as a star is hitting a black hole, right? It's in that analemma shooting out either side, right? So in the central point, you've got the black hole, and then the massive X-rays being shot out at either end along that same central axis point where you would see the analemma, the figure 8. So it is sort of like the representative of the central point of energy throughout the entire cosmos.
To the idea of it being a meditation relationship too, if one does the macrocosmic or microcosmic orbit meditation, the center point of what could be equated to the 8 is in the Dantian, our center point of our body. And we basically create a spiral connecting energy with one loop going up to our star or the North Star, if you will, and one point of the spiral going up, looping energy back down to you, and another aspect of the spiral or 8 coming together through the Earth. So you literally imagine bringing together the energy of the cosmic and the Earth into your microcosmic body by way of the 8 as
So
an energy flow.
You are the center of the cross of the 8.
Absolutely. Yeah. Your and the energy is flowing through you, and you also have other aspects, right? The upper portion of your body is flowing energy, and your lower part of your body is flowing energy point too. But yeah, the center point comes together in your Dantian. Yeah.
But we have more than one source of that energy toroid, right? You have your brain, you have your heart. I don't know if there's other parts creating that same toroidal kind of energy. But
the center point is the Dantian, and it's similar to the chakra system, just which would be in your heart rather than below your belly button is predominantly the place of Tai Chi. But there also is the upper, lower, and middle Dantian in the Taoist ideas, and other points of energy as well.
Well, I believe they created that system by the points where they felt heat, right? That they translate as ki and then translate as inner power, and then to a chakra or point of influence. So I think several meditative states give you that sensation of heat on your navel, which probably is the source of the idea that that's a chakra.
I could see it.
Headless is drawing in real time.
Okay, so that's exactly what they were talking about. You're just, you have one more.
I meant to mention that the whole vortex system. Sorry, it was exactly the meditation process. Yeah.
Boom, guys! Just all you got to do is draw it out in your head: the 1, the 0, and the 8, and then you're there. It's right in front of you.
That's dope.
Yeah, I signed up for all this, so now I'm going to get a bunch of spam emails.
Well, we did something great on this show. That is to confound and irritate most of flat earthers, because now we have a bigger ellipse on the northern hemisphere, and on the south hemisphere we have the elongated part of the 8 on the other side, which would be very hard to explain in a flat Earth. But I think they will have explanations. They will have explanations.
We love you guys. I want to hear your explanations. I really do. So come at me, bro. come at me. And hopefully, you guys, you have a wonderful week ahead of you. But I think we tied it all together again. It's like we're all using this figure 8 bow to tie all of these topics together. So, guys, if you love the show, share it out there. We got a pretty good following. Keep it going, right? So definitely check out these guys' websites. Tell them where they can find you.
Ethan.
Oh, well, again, thank you guys. That was dope. That my mind is swirling and spiraling right now. So yeah, easy to find on the social media, and plenty of writing out there. And please support my books, as I know many of you have, and I thank you. And please get Ricardo's book, especially the one on the telluric energy. Very, very profound. Good job on that.
Absolutely. So as for me, as I said, you can find me on X on Ricardo Calvary 1, as it is in the screen. If you go to my article section, you'll find the article about the Trovents, and you'll find more data than we talked here if you want to go into details. And just to remember people to check the Shaman and the Philosopher, that tonight at 8 p.m. Central, we'll publish our interview with Ed Casas, which is one of the individuals looking at the tridactyls, which is interesting. And there would be another show that is a Roundtable Chronicles. Unfortunately, I don't know what's going on. The sound was cut off. People that were on the show are not on the show in the recording, so I don't know what happened. I couldn't post that yesterday, but and that's it. So the Shaman and the Philosopher and the Universe Unveiled at the Institute for Natural Philosophy, and my papers, the papers we have created, especially on the copper that you can see on the Wandering Wolf show, are all in the Academia Edu at the Institute for Natural Philosophy. And thank you, Atlas, and thank you, Ethan. It was, again, a very pleasant conversation as usual.
Absolutely, Ricardo. You're always bringing stuff to my attention that maybe I haven't thought about in a while, and those rocks are right there. The trophy, such a mystery. I love that stuff. So, yeah. As I was sharing pictures of float copper on Instagram, they got flagged as being a copyright violation. So, guys, go out there and research this stuff. They really don't like you looking into it. Look up float copper in Michigan. It's not a topic they want you to check out. So it's really easy. Just look up float copper in Michigan.
They want you to believe that it's a very rare commodity. That there are no 10-ton pieces of copper going around. So.
Right. It's a very easy thing to do, guys. Just look up the stuff we talk about, and you'll find out that they're trying to hide stuff from you. That's all we do here. But yeah, definitely check out my other shows, and I'll see you again next time.
Thank you.